Hey guys, welcome back. This is your host Phil from underKG.com, and this is Samsung Galaxy A9 Pro 2019. Why 2019? Because there was another one called the A9 Pro back in 2016. Anyway, the biggest feature of the phone is the punch-hole camera right there on the left side top, and thanks to that, it mostly has a very slim bezel on the side and top. It does have some bezels on the bottom. It doesn't bother me that much, but if you're on for symmetry, it might, but it's got an offside front-facing camera to start with, so I guess it doesn't really matter anymore. The rear looks like this. It comes in either 3 or 4 different colors depending on the region, and I actually like this one. It's mostly black with a subtle hue of green here and there, and for most part it looks great. Maybe that's because I personally like the color green, but overall I believe this is more of a subtle, more gentler color than this lemonade blue, lemonade green, lemonade yellow, whatever the name was, this overly exaggerated young hip color. Just keep in mind that unlike the older generations of the Galaxy A series, this does not have weather protection at all, at least officially. Now, since the punch-hole camera is the biggest feature of the phone, let's begin with that. Firstly, it's a bit bigger than I thought. It doesn't bother me that much, but more on that later. Apps, you're wondering about the app compatibility. The built-in apps work just fine. The notification icon starts from the shifted part right there next to the camera, and most of the third-party apps also work fine without any problems, like the Google app right here. Instagram also work fine, and should you encounter any problems, there's an option for full screen apps, so you can choose the apps that you want to display in full screen, and they will do so, albeit losing some parts thanks to the camera right there. And if you really hate that part, you can actually just dish that space and push it down to the more conventional screen ratio. It would have looked a whole lot nicer if they rounded the corners. They didn't for some reason, I don't know why, but you can do this. Just in case you're wondering, the touch sensor actually works on top of the camera. So let's start with the touch point right there, and I'm gonna pull it till here, and it still works and recognizes and registers my touch as I go to the very edge and on top of the front-facing camera. Now, something that bothered me more was that there's a slight light bleed at the bottom of the camera. I'm not sure if this is only my unit, and also the separating line between the status bar and the main screen was way too tight up to the camera hole. You can see that there's not even a pixel between the camera and the status bar end. Overall, I don't hate the punch-hole camera, and I do understand that it's a part of the progress, but I would much rather have some bezel on top than this. The camera itself is not special. It's 24 megapixels f2.0. It's a bit shaky, but not so badly. It's okay. Overall, it takes nice photos along with the selfie focus. It's a bokeh effect on your selfies. Just a little complaint is that when it switches to front-facing camera to let you know where it is, it has a little glow right there, and that delays the switching actions, so that wastes some of my time and it makes it look like it stutters, so I would rather have an option to turn that off. Now, the panel on this phone is a rarity on an A series. It's a PLS LCD panel rather than an OLED one, and overall it's a pretty good one. It gets pretty bright, the color is pretty accurate, uniformity is not the best, but it's okay. But there are some options that Samsung kills. Firstly, the screen mode, where you can switch between number of screen modes, and the color correction. You don't have that on the A9 Pro because it's an LCD. Well, other Samsung phones with LCD panels have this option, so I don't know why. And also the blue light filter is missing. You simply don't have that. And lastly, the always on display. The A9 has it, A9 Pro does not, mainly because it's got an LCD panel, but LG did put it in the G series, although it's not the most energy efficient way, so Samsung could have definitely given us some options, but they just killed it off. Well, some options they did give us is the camera angles. It's got 3 of them, starting from top f2.4, 10 megapixels of telephoto, so that's 2x zoom. On center is f1.7, 24 megapixels of normal angle, and on the bottom is f2.2, 5 megapixels of depth sensing one. Now, the main camera is pretty good. I would have loved to have an OIS, but even without it, the lens is pretty bright, so it doesn't shake that much. It does shake a little bit, and it captures enough details even in the low lighting conditions. And there's scene optimizer that automatically recognizes a scene and decides what's the best for the scene. And from there, you can also apply for live focus. This is like a bokeh mode, and it works better than some of the older devices like the Galaxy S9 Plus or the Galaxy Note 9 or 8. But it still lacks some details on the edge processing, and overall it's just far worse than those of the flagship. Remember, this is not a flagship, but still, this is an A series. This is a top A series model. The zoom lens is not as bad as f2.4, so it does get a little shaky, but it does have autofocus, and it is an already zoom lens at the end of the day, so it does have some details, and it's not so bad. You may rely on it when you need it. Talking about performance, it's got Snapdragon 710 octa-core processor with 6GB or 8GB of RAM, along with 128GB of storage. But here's the catch. There's no microSD card expansion slot. It's only either single SIM or dual SIM that you can put in that slot. No microSD microSD. This is a rarity with the Samsung phone. They had it with the Galaxy Alpha and then Galaxy S6 series with the Note 5. And there was a huge backlash that they had to revive it back on the next lineup. But for some reason, they killed it again with the A9 Pro. Aside from that, performance itself is pretty good. Launching the app, closing that, launching another one, and switching between them are actually a breeze. And this was the case with the Snapdragon 660 touting A9 Pro, and it's just better here because the Adreno 616's graphics performance is good enough for most games. And also the full screen gesture is way better than the older one. You can just swipe on the bottom for back, home, and multitasking. And the little animation right there tells you whether you did it right or wrong. I still prefer OnePlus's implementation, but it is an improvement. And where there's a gain, there's some loss. It doesn't have Samsung Pay, at least the MST one, where you can universally use it at virtually any of the stores. And for some reason, they got rid of palm swipe to capture and lift to wake. I don't know why. Moving on to another thing they got rid of, the audio. Well, the speaker is on the bottom and it sounds moderately good. It's about average. It's not too bad. It's not too good. It's there. And there are plenty of sound effects if you want to customize it, and there's even Dolby Atmos for your earphones. Earphones that you can connect in the USB-C port somehow, because it doesn't come with the adapter and it doesn't come with the headphone jack. Samsung also got rid of the headphone jack. I'm usually not that mad at this practice because everybody's doing it, but this is Samsung. I've had some hopes for them, and they just crushed it with the A9 Pro. About battery, it's got 3400 mAh of cell built inside, smaller than the vanilla A9, but it's not that bad. It gave me around 6 hours of screen on time, and it does support fast charging. Half an hour is going to give you 37%, an hour for 70%, an hour and a half for 97%, and fully charging the phone is going to take an hour and 40 minutes. Since I'm always on the LTE network, never on Wi-Fi, and surf the web for most of my time, most of you are probably going to be able to gain around an hour or two more than I had. All right, now it's time for conclusion. Samsung tried a lot of things, a lot of new things, because they made it clear that they want to try new things starting with the cheaper lineup, like the A series or the J or now the M series. And boy did they test a lot of things, starting with the punch hole camera. I wasn't much of the fan of the position, the size, and the way it looks, but I can deal with it. I didn't hate it. Killing off the headphone jack. I hate it, but everybody's doing it, so I can probably deal with it. But no microSD card slot, really? That was something that people were buying Samsung for. I mean, some Android manufacturers are doing that, and of course Apple never had them, but it is a Samsung phone after all. And this is something that you expect without any doubt, and Samsung killed it. And no Samsung Pay. Again, this is a top A series model. And no weather protection, although older models had that. And they still charge around $530 for this. Sure, the phone does have Snapdragon 710, relatively large storage with RAM, and it does have a Samsung brand, but essentially this is an overpriced phone lacking pretty much everything that people expect from a Samsung phone. If you can get this around $100 cheaper, like in mainland China, around $430, yeah, go for it. It's not that bad bang for a buck. Sure, you can spend $100 more for a Samsung than a Xiaomi, but $200 more than a Xiaomi or Vivo or Oppo or whichever Chinese brand that you would substitute this for, I don't think it's worth it. So that was the Galaxy A9 Pro. It's not a bad phone, but it's a bad Samsung phone. If you have any questions, please do leave them down in the comments. You can always meet us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We'll see you guys later. Ciao.